Hello, Mike Lee here to give you an update on the activities of the various teams within the Shlaer-Mellor Commons over the past year. There have been some interesting developments and activities going on. Let's take a look. Here's what we'll be covering today. I'll start by providing a little background on the Shlaer-Mellor Commons for those who might not be familiar with the community. Next, we'll take a look at the activities of the various teams within the Commons. And finally, we'll consider expectations for the upcoming year. So let's get to it. The community was created in early 2021, reflecting a critical mass of interest that came together after the 2020 xtUML conference. You can see here the purpose for creating the community. It had three critical ideas. Number one, we wanted a community where like-minded people could gather. Number two, we wanted to see continuous improvement in the method and related assets, as we wanted it to be a living, not a historical method. And number three, we wanted to reduce the cost of entry for newcomers so the community could grow. Given this purpose, we set about establishing the community by first, clarifying our goals and values so it would be clear where we were going and how we'd be working together. Next, we identified the different activities the community would need to be engaged in as a means of organizing ourselves into teams. This led to the temple logo, with the roof being the community, the pillars, the key method-related activities, and the foundation being the operational infrastructure. And finally, we initiated work in three key areas: the community, OOA modeling, and RdTooling to get things going. And with this, we were off and running. Now let's take a look at what we've been up to this past year. So we're going to start by taking a look at the activities of the community team. An interesting thing about these activities is that they were actually initiated by members asking questions. And the questions were, how are things run in the community? Who's in charge? And how can I stay informed? Good questions all. Let's take a look at how we answered them. Our first step in answering these questions was to focus on how we wanted to operate. That involved producing governance and policy documents to clarify this. Clive Boughton drove this effort. His experience and hard work proved essential to pulling this all together. It was a bit of work. Thumbs up, Clive. It's not the plane, it's the pilot. Next, we created an executive committee to manage these community operations. It consisted of Court, John, and myself. So now the buck clearly stops here. You know who to compliment or blame. The final question about keeping members informed clearly pointed to improving communications. And for this, we felt we needed to make improvements in our infrastructure that supported our communications. So our first step was to clarify the community's infrastructure requirements and then put a stake in the ground for the tools we'd use to improve our communications. Lee Remenschneider played a key role in this effort and provided us with a rich set of tooling to consider. Thumbs up for that work, Lee, and I'm sure you'll be back. And while we didn't make any great leaps forward here, we have clarified our requirements and defined a baseline of communication tools to be used across the entire community. A key tool that we thought was being underutilized for communications was our website. So we focused there next and expanded it to include operational information, how we go about our work, information on our various activities and events, like this one, and finally, the work products of the various teams to make them visible to the whole community and not just the team members working on them. Hopefully, this work helped to address the questions that were raised earlier, and we encourage you to continue to provide feedback and help the community grow in productive ways like this. And a great way to provide feedback and stay in touch is to visit the website. Here's the URL. And please, get in touch if you have questions or want to participate. We're always looking for volunteers. Now let's take a look at what's been going on in the issues group of the OOA modeling team, led by yours truly. 2 additional issues have been taken up by the group this past year, dealing with clarifying the behavior of polymorphic events and considering the deprecation of asynchronous creation. Similar to the initial two issues taken up by the group, there were different positions taken by the different schools of practice on these issues. Thus, the net result was more to clarify where each school of practice stood, rather than agree to a single solution or resolution to these issues. Partially because of this history and partially because of the desire to try something new, the next issue we are undertaking is a bit different. Rather than trying to understand and possibly resolve the positions of different schools of practice, this issue seeks to clarify an aspect of the method in order to facilitate communications between analysts and architects on this topic. The aspect under consideration is the execution concurrency the models allow based on the OOA execution rules. Our approach on this is also going to be a little bit different. We are starting by drafting an initial technical note to capture our understanding of the issue. Then we'll review the note with the OOA Council and possibly refine our understanding based on their feedback. This should then provide a complete and common vocabulary for discussing the topic. Possible topics for discussion could include things like managing available execution resources, ensuring data integrity, bridging, and so forth. We'll see. If you'd like more details on this work or want to follow our progress as we proceed, please visit the website. There you will find all the position papers and technical notes related to these issues. So that's the work being done in the issues group of the OOA modeling team. Next, let's take a look at the work being done in the metamodel group. The metamodel effort is being led by Mark Balzer. Shortly after last year's conference, Mark initiated the effort to create a formal definition of Shlaer-Mellor OOA, or as we commonly call it, the OOA metamodel. The group's first step was to capture the existing metamodels and take a closer look at them. This resulted in cataloging the following metamodels. As you might expect, there were many similarities in the models, and yes, many differences as well. So where do we go from here? Well, rather than attempt to identify, compare, and possibly resolve differences among the different metamodels at this level, Mark has decided to take a more ground-up approach. First, he plans to consolidate and normalize the OOA rules. If you're familiar with these rules, you know they have been spread across many years and many publications. Just curating these rules and normalizing them, if you will, is a valuable effort all in and of itself. His next step will be to review these rules and compare their interpretation with the different schools of practice. And in this review, he plans to focus on the semantic of the rules rather than the different syntaxes or notation of the models. This is what he means by taking a ground-up approach to the problem. Hopefully, this will produce a smoother path to a formal definition of the method. If you'd like more details on this work or want to follow the progress of Mark's group, please visit the website. There you will find all the metamodels and associated technical notes. All right, well, we've reported on the community and OOA modeling teams at this point. Isn't this status stuff exciting? Boy, I tell you. Well, hang in there. We have just one more team to go, the RD modeling team. The RdTooling team, led by John Wolf, started last year with an effort to characterize the different tool sets available for translation. Here's what those efforts have produced. The characterization of the PT bridgepoint tooling has been completed. The characterization of the xtUML tooling was suspended as support for the xtUML architectures was migrated to Bridgepoint. Good work there. And the characterization of the model realization Mica tooling is only in outline form at the moment and still in search of a volunteer to complete this task. Do we have any takers? Okay, well, the next step for this team, as we discussed earlier, will be working with the OOA modeling team on clarifying concurrent processing in OOA and the implications this has for model execution. It was John who initiated this effort, and having seen over the years the challenges concurrency creates, both at the functional and data integrity level, and for the analysts and architects, I'm really looking forward to getting into this. And yes, all of this work is available on the Commons website. Okay, you know what that means. We've completed the compulsory part of the status report, and it's time to wake up for the fun stuff. And I think this next item is really exciting. One of the side effects of getting people together in these various groups is that you get unplanned, serendipitous interactions that lead to new discoveries, insights, and progress. Court occasionally commented on this as he was working with Colin and the KC folks on migrating KC architectures to Bridgepoint. At one point, he even commented, if this synergy is all that comes of getting this community together, I'd still consider it a great success. I totally agree. Synergy is an amazing thing. It speaks to the old adage that the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts. Indeed. So I'm going to share with you now some late-breaking news that looks like another serendipitous event that may lead to some interesting results. It involves the RdTooling and OOA modeling team members crossing paths on implicit bridging. That's right, implicit bridging. This is certainly a subject of long-standing interest and speculation. Let's see what's happened here so far. It started with Leon working on the OOA meta model and expanding it to include a model for implicit bridging. He then wrote a technical note to explain his work from the perspective of the analyst. Leon then shared this with Andrew Mangonia, who provided Leon with some feedback, and then wrote his own technical note on this topic from the perspective of the model execution domain. This considered how one might translate the implicit bridge specifications Leon was proposing and what support this might require at the model execution time. John then shared Andrew's note with Levi Sterrett, who reviewed it. He then provided Andrew feedback on the technical note and shared his thoughts on the topic with him. So at this point, we have some pretty interesting modeling and translation considerations on the topic of implicit bridging, taking place across a couple of tool sets and teams. That's just wonderful. This kind of collaboration is exactly what the Commons is here to encourage. Leon and Andrew are now updating and expanding their technical notes based on feedback and further research they're doing. So what next? Well, I don't want to lead the witness or put pressure on anyone, but I expect we'll eventually see some tool prototyping to both vet and refine these concepts. The whole certainly is looking like more than the sum of its parts now, isn't it? Exciting work. Let's have more of this. So what next for the community? For the current teams, I think it's steady as she goes. We're on pretty good paths, and we're making progress in these areas as folks engage and contribute. We'll also benefit from the collaboration opportunities our community provides. Who knows? We might even solve implicit bridging. But what about new activities? Here I think we need to step up to investing in making the method more visible and accessible to newcomers. And for that, I think the most important first step is investing in activities in the education and promotion areas. And here, I think we should distill the method to basically produce a concise overview that can be communicated quickly and easily. Next, we should organize our references to support the previous point. There's a very rich set of resources for this. We need to leverage them and fill in any gaps we may find in the process and make this information more readily accessible. I also think it's very important that we identify our context in the current system and software engineering disciplines so newcomers know where Shlaer-Mellor fits in and the value it provides in these contexts. And finally, and this cuts across all the teams, I think we need to leverage the synergy our community offers and continue to look for opportunities to collaborate on challenging problems. But that's just my opinion. What's yours? If we have time for Q&A after this, please let us know. If we don't, I think you know how to get in touch now and provide that feedback. Thanks again for your time. Keep the faith.